In this section, the so-called intermediate section of the three that we are doing, we are carrying the concept of dowsing much further. In the beginning, we went from the initial stages of dowsing as it's generally understood, to map dowsing at a distance. But now we are getting a little further into not only far seeing, but far doing, action at a distance. It's rather interesting that the physicists, the important ones, Einstein in particular, said that there is no such thing as action at a distance. He said that everything had to be adjacent to everything else, and that like dominoes, one domino had to lean on another for something to happen at a distance. There are several important physics experiments and theories that bear on that, but we will save those for the third section. I think the best way to get into this is by anecdotal means, and it's most easily grasped. I'm going to start with an incident in Quito in Ecuador, following a major, it wasn't an earthquake, but one of the three huge mountains that they have there blew its top. And the effect was heard 50, 60 kilometers away. In fact, the hotel that I stay at, in the Colón in Quito, had its walls cracked, and people who were terrified ran out of the streets and so on. And the plant that I had worked at previously and had developed a 450-gallon-a-minute well suddenly had that well cut in half. The holding tank that had been used for that was filling with sand, and they had to cut down the flow first every 24 hours until they finally just stopped, cut that source off entirely. The difficulty in maintaining a flow was too great. I was down there on this occasion for another purpose. They wanted to find CO2 wells, and the manager, the technical director, asked me if I could do anything to restore the continuity of the well that had been flowing at the rate of 450 gallons a minute. I said, I don't know, I'll try. But one learns from the challenges, and here was a difficult one. If you can visualize the plant, it's on a hillside with a roaring stream at the bottom, ice cold water, now heavily polluted by industry upstream. But this was, the 450-gallon one was a tributary to this stream and passed right under the plant. And its origin, its vertical rise from very deep in the ground, was on another property behind a stone wall with broken glass on it. The wall was about 8 feet high and surrounded the plant at that point along the hillside. The field on the other side had cattle in it, and there was a chicken farm further up on the ridge, and the grass was very green. It was a lovely sight, and the only trouble was that the holding tank and so forth on the plant side could not be used because of the failure of the stream due to the earthquake. So when he asked me, I said, well, it won't take long to find out if we can do it. Let's try anyway. I said, please bring me dos escalas, 2 ladders. One ladder to go up the stone the wall with the glass on top so you wouldn't kill yourself when you went down the other side, another ladder. So immediately 2 ladders appeared as if by magic, and we all went up and into the field beyond. I say all because the technical director led the way, but he was accompanied by a lot of curious young engineers. And hereby hangs a tale. But anyway, I traced the stream that I had found some years before up into the field. There was quite a climb up there until I came to the point where it rose vertically in the ground. And I asked them all to remain quiet, and I put on a bit of an act. You have to do that sometimes to impress them that you're really doing something. They can't understand pure mental action as action. And so I asked them all to be quiet, and while I said a little prayer, I think I said something about invoking the powers of nature, but I could see right away that the vertical rise had become split, that there had been a rock fall in the ground at a distance of about 420 feet, and that the rock fall there was a dividing slab of maybe 30 or 40 feet down there, and that it had blocked half of it from emerging and joining the original channel and going down under the wall and into the holding tank. It had gone off to the side and was flowing uselessly away. So I did go through a bit of a ritual or rigmarole. I asked, I don't know whether I did this aloud or not, but I asked for the nature's hierarchy. Where in nature's hierarchy, where was the source of the control of this water? And it said, well, up by the chicken farm, up on top of the ridge, there was another huge blind spring, one that didn't come out like this one, and that that element, that spirit of nature which controlled the flow, had its permanent home right in that spot. So I said, well, I'm here as a stranger, and these are nice people. Would you be so kind as to give me permission and help in rearranging this rockfall and seeing that the one stream is merged with the other? And the answer seemed to come back favorably. And so I explained to the expectant crowd around me, I said the Icha, the daughter, has become separated from the mother. So we will now reunite the family, and try to. So please understand me if I seem to be priest-like and making a little prayer here. And there are very solemn faces around there. The engineers looking down their nose at me. I knew they were expectant because they knew that I had done other things, but I think they wanted the gringo to fail once. So I did ask that the two sources of water be reunited around this rock and rise above it and become as one again and go down through the original channel integrated and down under the wall and into the holding tank. So it didn't take very long, but in the process, one of the cows came up and licked me in the face. That produced a guffaw from the gallery, but I was satisfied that I had done all I could. Now, this was nothing but, if you want to call it, a prayer or a mental interaction. That's all it was, and that's all I could do. There was nothing mechanical about it at all. So I said, well, I've done what I could. Now let's go back and look for CO2. So we went up over the ladder again, down the other side, and the end of that story is that when I got back home, there was a nice check for my favorite charity because the flow had become very close to 400 gallons a minute and was rising, and the holding tank no longer had sand in it. So I felt that there was justification in accepting challenges of that kind. That thought not only could perceive things accurately at a distance. I think that a dowser worthy of the name, worthy of his own skill, should be able to find running underground water within any square meter on the face of the planet. Now, this was utterly different. This was carrying it much further and moving things at a distance. Certainly 400 feet down on the ground was not within reach. And it was within mental reach, apparently, because the thing righted itself, and as far as I know, is still flowing at the original rate. Well, that was another step in the progression, and a very helpful one. I thought back about this, and in Vermont, I go back to Vermont again. It's been the source of so much of interest and fun in this thing. There was in the 60s, 1960s and 70s, a New Hampshire man who was a competent dowser. He could find water, who had read a treatise of all things by a Zulu witch doctor on how to move water in the ground. A Zulu witch doctor. So he proceeded to experiment with it. When he found a water vein, he would take a pinch bar or crowbar, that's a 5-foot, more or less, straight steel bar, drive it in the ground on top of the vein of water, and hammer it in the direction in which he wanted it to go. Now, if you had a country school with a 123-foot drilled hole, the way this would work was the dry well, which had failed, still had a flow of water going by it. For some reason or other, heavy machinery, vibrations, or just nature, the workings of nature had diverted the vein which filled that well. It had originally been a dowsed well at 123 feet. The way this worked is, you find the vein somewhere to the side of the well and upstream from it, uphill from it, drive the steel bar in, and strike the base of the bar at the ground level with a long-handled hammer or mallet of some weight to give it substance in the direction of the dry hole. In this case, it was a sunny day, and the gathered throng there, who were fascinated by what was going on, took a mirror and shone the sunlight right down to the bottom of the well, which they could see. The well, fortunately, was drilled straight. Some of them are so crooked you can't see the bottom. But they shone the sunlight down so that it was illuminated. You can do it with a powerful flashlight too, but it works very well with a mirror. And as this cadence went on, boom, 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 at the base of the steel rod, they could actually see the water beginning to come back into the well at its bottom. Now that's the procedure, and that's the way it should work. There's some argument about how far a vein can be moved in the ground, but the farthest on record is about 50 yards, which is an amazing distance. The ground was shale in that case and easily penetrated, so that it may depend a lot on the texture of the subsoil and the sub-rock. But normally it's 5 or 10 feet is nothing in a case like this. To go back to to the New Hampshire man. He had actually perfected this and was the first to tell us about it in the 60s and 70s at our conferences, which we held in the town of Danville, Vermont. They were fascinating things, people from all walks of life bringing their experiences together and sharing them. And he said that his method depended on digging a small hole, placing the steel bar at one edge and hitting it in the direction in which it went. He believed, the Zulu witch doctor didn't explain it, but he believed that it was the cadence, the shock, that was carrying down through the earth into the ground and counteracting the shock which had originally diverted it. In any case, he got so proficient at it that the state of Vermont, now mind you, these are thrifty Yankees we're talking about, the state of Vermont gave him a contract to clear the springs that were rising under all the dirt roads that at that time were all over the state of Vermont before they surfaced entirely. They're almost all surfaced now, and you have to look hard for a good dirt road. But the fact was that there would be springs under them, and they would be freezing from the water in the winter and spring months, and it would heave the road up and cause a lot of trouble. So the state road department actually gave him a contract to go all over Vermont and look for the places where those ruptures had occurred and divert the water to the side. And he did that, I think, for a number of years. So that practical evidence was enough to start us off on experiments in our own sections of the world. The only thing was, I found that it wasn't necessary to have a steel rod, that the vibrations could be set in motion by mental action. Now that was a major discovery and belongs in this intermediate section to tell you how far along dowsing was coming in the 70s and 80s. The requests soon began to come by phone, by fax later on, and by letter. They came to me from all over the world, and sometimes in the beginning it would be limited to, we have a wet cellar. Our house is full of mold. We also have arthritis. Can you do anything about it? I would mark the veins of water which went under this house and was causing the wet cellar, or the mold, or the, as I later found out, the correlation with arthritis. Then I would mentally divert them. Let's suppose that there were 3 veins going underneath a house. If they all started uphill from the house, I could divert one into the second, and below that junction point, the third right around the corner of the house, depending on the slope of the land and so forth. I would ask which is the easiest corner to divert them around. Doing it mentally seemed to be just as efficient as being on the spot and working with a crowbar and a sledgehammer. The cellar would dry up, and as I found out, the arthritis began to be less troublesome. So that was the beginning of healing. We found out that there was a correlation between underground flowing water and arthritis, and then other diseases. Cancer was one of them. Heart disease was another one. And mental depression was another one. But that all came along slowly and deliberately, and we didn't rush any of our fences. We didn't want to claim too much. but it just happened naturally through requests from friends or friends of friends. Always there was a human need, if you notice in this, and that seemed to spark the. You rose to the challenge, and that seemed to invoke whatever powers you might have learned, or those that you haven't learned yet. I remember at a conference, after talking about this, what little we knew about it, this must have been in the 60s, early 70s, there was a young man who came up, and he said, "I'm a teacher devoted to children who are don't have all their faculties. In fact, I have two that I would like to ask you about. And their reading abilities are what is in question. I have a whole class of them, but these people cannot keep up with even the others." And I said, "What are their names?" He gave me the names. And the name is all you need, I think, to focus on, because that identifies that one individual from all the others in the world. So he gave me the names, and I said, "Well, give me some time and let me try and figure out where their school is, where their homes are, and so forth." He said, "Oh, their home life is terrible. They're abused because they can't keep up and act like other kids and so forth." So again, it was a case of finding water flows under the schoolroom, at home, in the abusive home. And there was something else I found, and that was that there are spirits who are not exactly with us in this world, are not exactly where they belong in the next world. Ghosts, entities, whatever you want to call them. We found that they were attracted to water flows in the ground, and that the water flows, maybe because of the positive ions, we're not sure yet, provide a support system along with being attractive to wandering spirits, and that when they find somebody that they can control or manifest through and live again, or quasi-live again, they will do so. The world is full of this kind of thing. We came to this realization rather reluctantly, but we found it was so we followed it up. In the case of these two children, young boys, who couldn't read, I think there were 3 errors per page, something like that, on the tests. There was a series of exposures to both water veins and entities in their homes and in the school and elsewhere. So after doping it all out, we said, well, if we can do something about the water veins, either moving it or changing its nature, changing the nature of its radiation by thought, let's try it. Then if we can do that, let's try something with the entities, with the ghosts, and see if we can persuade them to go to where they will be happy and go forward under the nature's plan and not inflict disharmony and trouble on children or other people here, old people, anybody. So we tried it. Now that also was a seminal incident, because we kept the two teachers, I asked them to please keep an accurate record, and I have it at home, by day, errors per page in reading and so forth. They became good readers. That's the whole point of it, after we got through that, and remained so. And I would check on them in the years after that, and they developed very well. Not perfectly, because they were dysfunctional to begin with, but they became happier members of society and could fulfill a role in it. That was a very important thing for us, and we found out that there was a good deal of confirmation for this kind of thing in England. We would go to England and attend their conferences and ask what they were doing about this kind of thing. And I remember a very nice man who had arthritis and who was a writer, and he was sitting at a certain desk, and his fingers were such that it was becoming difficult for him to put on paper what he wanted to put on paper. So his wife said, "You know, in the ancient literature, there's this thing about sticking a iron poker into a water vein. If you have arthritis, it will change it." Well, he would try anything. He's sort of an antiquarian and interesting man. He did it, and his fingers loosened up. So we had little bits of confirmation like that. But we went them one better, because we didn't use an iron poker stuck in the ground. We altered the radiation, and that is what I think we do with the of the flowing underground streams of water, so that they no longer affect people in the same way. I remember talking to the Jersey Society of Parapsychology in New Jersey years ago, and I brought this out, and that's the seat of AT&T's research, and there were quite a few of the AT&T people in the audience, and one of them came up afterwards, and we talked about it, and I said, "Have you any idea what might be occurring when we do this kind of thing mentally from a distance?" And we talked about the oxygen atom, which is a long atom, and the answer, the tentative answer then, and I know of no better, is that we in some way can affect the one electron in that atom, and that utterly changes the nature of the flow of water in a ladder effect. From that point downstream, it's all different. In any case, it does seem different to a dowser after he's done that. A dowser who doesn't know that the stream has been treated will come up to a stream and say, "Hey, I know it's a stream here, but it doesn't react it doesn't have the same pull." For example, if you use a wire rod like this, it doesn't give me the tension. They know that something has happened to the stream. If you have an ion meter, which measures, we'll say, the positive or negative ions in 1 cubic centimeter of air, they're an expensive portable machine, about so big. If you have one of those, you will find that the background count goes down about 30% of positive ions when you do this over a flowing stream. You have to be careful in doing that, because the breeze, no matter the atmosphere that stirs, brings a lot of count that makes it awkward, a mix of positive and negative. But I've done it with an inside a house where there was a strong stream, where there was no current, air currents, and it did show about a 30% drop in positive ions when you made that little prayer. So if the scientists wanted to, they could prove us right or wrong. And the main thing, though, is judgment by result. And the fact is that it is helpful in getting people over various ailments. I've mentioned some, but there are many ailments. And what is happening, I think, is that we are an electrical system. We're an electrodynamic system. All of our bodies are. I think that if we're talking about an excess of positive ions, that you have a lot of free radicals and a lot of changes in the system, which is bound in the end to affect the immune system, the DNA. So I think that in doing this, we somehow do alter the environment, the particular environment of water flows, and that in turn takes a lot of pressure off the immune system. And nature is the healer. Nature will bring it back again if you give her half a chance, and she does that. So the joy of all this is that we found that it can be done at a distance, and so this is what happened. And now there are, I think, log cases of all kinds of acute and chronic disease exceed about, I think, 3,300 in some cases as of this date. And that's taken place over 20 or 30 years as a hobby. And again, no charging and no claims. But people accept that and ask for help, and apparently it does help. And sometimes there are complete reversals of very drastic conditions. Let me outline exactly what happens when somebody does write, somebody does call, or somebody does fax. The first thing one has to do, at least that I feel that I have to do, is find out if it's a genuine call, because I may not know the person at all. They say, well, I'm a friend of Peggy's, and she said to call you because I have a heart condition. And when did you see Peggy last? I try to find out if everything's on the up and up. Well, it is. And then I say, well, what would you like me to do? What do you want to happen? And they relate the condition. And they say, Peggy says you can do something about this. And I haven't been able to get any help anywhere else. And besides, it costs a lot of money. And I understand you do this for nothing. So I'm very popular that way. So I say, well, could you tell me a few facts about yourself? It's very impolite, but how old are you? And there's a reason for that, as you'll see in a minute. And I want to know your address so I can write back to you. I want to know your workplace so I can see where you may be bombarded by these things. I want to know the friends and family that you may visit on a regular basis. This is all in the current context. I don't need to go back more than a year. I need to know what doctors you see, what drugs you're taking, what hospitals you are in occasionally, if you're doctoring to that extent. Then I have a list of sites, and I tell them, well, thank you very much. For trusting me, I'll give it a try and see what happens. So when I go to work on it, if you call it work, the first thing I do is go through all the sites to see if there are water veins and entities involved. Well, there may be. There may be 3 water veins and 3 entities, seldom more than 3 at any one particular place. There may be also conditions within the DNA. If we have been able to think changes in the ground of large flows of water, why can we not effect changes in the DNA itself? From the infinitely large, why can't we do the infinitely small? So I go to the DNA And I ask, are there any dysfunctional segments? Yes, there are 3. Where are they? And what chromosome are they? So I'll identify them. 6 is usually the chromosome that involves the immune system, so I may find something in 6. But I've also found a constant flow of trouble in chromosome 13, 17, 21, and sometimes in the X and the Y, the male and the female. So I will note those down, and then I will ask that they be reordered according to the plan, the beneficial plan for this particular person. And the only way to prove that we are doing something would be lab work with a laser, but nobody's interested enough to do it. But again, the results are good enough so that you can say there is a judgment by result that this is an important thing to do and that we are doing something that really happens. Well, I then ask if there is a trauma affecting this person. You remember in the first segment we said we closed that by saying that we are multidimensional beings, so that on the emotional or mental level there may be some disorder brought back by memory from a past event, which is affecting the person, the DNA again, in a different way, but affecting it nonetheless. So we go back and find maybe 2 trauma, maybe 3 traumas, and we ask that those be altered and dissipated, sent back into the innate, into the unmanifest, so they no longer affect the person, and that the memory of it be wiped clean. Then we ask, after we've done the sites, we've done the DNA, we've done the trauma, then comes the past of this person. That's why we asked how old they were. How many sites are there in the past life of this person from birth? And there may be 6. Well, when were they? So many years before the present, so many years more before the present, so many, and so on. And what were these sites? Well, they were water veins and entities, and believe it or not, those are points of interference which are carried forward by the memory, and unless you wipe them out, they're still there. So we go and purge the past. But the past from birth isn't enough. We found out, again through an English person who was most helpful in this, she was a nurse, that you have to consider the prenatal period. Having gone through the prenatal period, having gone through the prenatal period from the point of view of waters and entities and by month, and also by trauma by month, and cleared it all up mentally, we have obviated, hopefully, all the impact, all that is impacting the patient externally. Now comes the other half of this healing mode. We now approach the person mentally. They may be in Tokyo or Minneapolis or anywhere. It doesn't make any difference because there is no time and space on this level. We found that out. So we approach them and we give them loving greetings, because on the level that we're talking about is most important. It's a very susceptible, tender level. And we say that we are here in response to their own request, and that we are not encroaching upon them, but we are there to be of service and help, and just hope we are. The first thing we do is to suggest that their electric field, we said they were multidimensional beings, but we didn't say exactly how that works out. We will go into that later on. But there is a field, electric and electromagnetic both, that surrounds the human body. We don't have merely dowsing to justify that. But we will skip that for the moment. There are bands around the body, and we will suggest to the person that they release all that is impacting their electric field and preventing the life force in it from entering the physical body and passing through it and getting transformed, transmuted, and distributed to the DNA throughout, bringing harmony and balance to it. We suggest that when they do that, that the release that they are making be destroyed or sent back into the innate, because we don't want that pollution, because it is the most subtle kind of pollution going around the hospital or around the home and harming other members of the family or other patients. We do that with the body too. We ask that the points, the pressure points, the lines of distribution within the body be released from toxins that are lodged in it as a result of this other blockage, and that the toxin be grounded in the planetary field so that there's no pollution, and that this go all the way down into the cellular level, billions and billions of cells. Now, you may think that such a mere asking or a mere suggesting has no power. Believe me, it does have power. It is the essence of prayer. Having done that, we make sure that the person is insulated themselves from further encroachment by forgiving, releasing, letting go of all the encroachments that other souls have made upon them since the beginning of time, since their soul was a soul. It's the only time we go back beyond the present. And we ask them to suggest that they ask for forgiveness of all the souls against whom they have encroached in the same long span of creation. There's another aspect of forgiveness we present to them, and it's usually the one where they give you the most argument. We suggest that you forgive yourself for the sins of commission and omission, the things that have kept you separate from a full awareness of who you really are, of your purpose and your identity as a unique soul created by nature for a purpose. Having gotten through that, there's a most important part still left on the personal contact, if I may call it. We now hold up a sort of a mirror to them, and we suggest that they look in this mirror and see in it their essence. Look at who you really are. And this brings up a completely dark mirror in most cases. Sometimes there's a glimmer of light in it without form. In rare cases, you have more developed souls where you see a wave form or beginning to be formed. And if you do, you encourage that. You say, let me paint the rest of the wave. It's a quadripartite wave, and that is your soul wave. It's the real essence of you. And it comes in a conical shape. One on top like this, another one like that, another one like that, another one like that. And they correspond. Down at the bottom, the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. And this wave has its own color, its own sound, and its own unique properties, which are yours and yours alone. So if you can visualize what I've just painted in the mirror for you to visualize, you can rely on it because it has the answer in it. It has the bytes, it has the information in it, which can be transformed into numbers and words and actions by you through the intricate system of the field out here and the cellular business inside the body for absolutely correct action. And this will govern health, it will govern right decisions, it will govern your purpose in life. And I think that once you have seen that way, you'll never forget it, and you will be going back to it on subtle levels, whether you consciously do so or not. It doesn't make any difference, because on the subtle levels it will begin to feed the grosser levels, and you will become a different person. So we're not through yet with the personal contact, because we tell them that if in your meditations or before you fall asleep or rise up in the morning, you begin to see light either in sheet form or in particle form, it's a good sign. It means that what we have been talking about is beginning to process. If you think consciously that there is such a disorder and injustice in the conditions that you're meeting, remember that there cannot be disorder unless there is order for it to become disorder from. So you might as well think of the orderly part, and then the glass will always be half full. Finally, before we leave each other, I say to them, let us go to the part of your being where we can ask that others, in their hearts, minds, and hands, if however you think of it, in their whole being, be guided in their relationship with you. That means your professional advisors, your doctors, your family. So often people are a prison in their own family. Your friends, but more especially your own heart, minds, and hands. We ask that those be guided according to your highest purpose. We give thanks that that's been done and release you. Well, it takes a lot of words to describe that, but actually it goes very quickly. And the key to it is the wave part. Why? Because everything in the universe, as far as I'm concerned, is a wave. And we are a 4-part wave. Animals are a 3-part wave. And we can adjust to that and talk to the animals. And there are many animal healings to suggest that that is true. Horses, cats, dogs, and people write to me about their animals. And I will say that animals are invariably true to themselves. Even the highly bred animals, which no longer have the bodies for which they were originally intended, even they are truer to themselves than us grown-ups. Children also are, as a rule, true to themselves. And what does that mean? The beings that are true to themselves are the easiest ones to heal. They heal quickly and permanently. Those of us who have built-in blocks and are congested in our bodies and our minds and our hearts are difficult to heal because we hate to give up the structures that we have built. Just to make the point, I remember giving a lecture in North Carolina once. There was a couple hundred people in the hall, and I got to this point where I was trying gingerly to introduce healing, and there was a man in the back. I asked for volunteers. At first I got a dog, and I did the dog with everybody following through, and then the man came up at my request, and he said, if you can fix me, he said, I'll testify to anybody you want. And he came up hobbling in a neck brace, and he was in great pain, you could see, and everybody could see him. Well, the fact is, with this regime that I just described in detail. We went through the whole thing right in front of the audience. Everybody, I said, if you don't want to do it, just stand aside, mentally stand aside. But if you want to do it with me, and you'll get the idea that there is such a thing as spiritual mental healing. And the fact of the matter was that within 2 months I got a letter from him saying that he was walking his dogs on the beach and felt perfectly fine. I've had several letters from his wife and himself later, and that was one nice result, but there are many others too. Some with minor diseases, allergies and so forth, some with very serious ones, cancer of the uterus and so on. They can't find the cancer cells 2 weeks later when they were examined and getting ready for an operation avoided. Well, it's not all perfect. And why it's not perfect is, I think, number one, I'm not perfect myself, and it takes perfection to create perfection, but also a lot of these people, and I've learned how to judge them, are not sufficiently on an awareness level, a vibratory level, where that master wave, I call it the master wave, can be increased and encouraged to bring them perfect health. I think that's one of the reasons why. Kids, as I say, children, don't worry about the baggage that most of us collect in later life, and so they're easy to heal, and so are animals who are true to themselves. But another reason it doesn't work is because the very serious people, I had a man with astrocytoma, and he was completely cured, and the doctors didn't give him 2 months to live when I got his case. And even the sockets where the tumor was in the brain were not filled with liquid, which would have been just as fatal as if they had been a genuine tumor in them. But the tumor's gone. They were completely gone. He died maybe 8-9 months later. Why? The man moved, and he was having wife trouble. He moved to another house. He did not keep in touch with me. The other house had all the features that we've just described, entities and water veins. It was almost as if it was decreed that this man be the way he was. He was a very prominent man working with children and in giving them strength and health and vitality, and it was a great loss. And I only wish that he had kept in touch, because I think that we might have prolonged his life and made it a very useful middle and old age for him. There are many others, but I would say and close with a word about the medical community. Sometimes they ask about this. Some doctors I work with, I point out that there are 50 states. They all have medical practice acts, and they all say the same thing. You have to have the Board of Licensure certify you as a healer before you can heal. The Food and Drug Administration and the Pure Food, Drug and under the Pure Food and Cosmetic Drug and Cosmetic Act makes it a felony if you use a device to heal anybody, unless it's under their permission. So there are many laws, and you better obey them unless you want to get in trouble. One thing is don't touch. One thing is don't charge, but always love.